Rain-slicked streets reflected the orange glow of the lake lights. The sound of engines echoed through the cul-de-sac as Mason locked the wrought iron gate to the private lake entrance. He didn't like confrontation, never had, but tonight was different. Tonight, the rules mattered. Who the hell? A sharp, familiar voice pierced the night. Karen Whitmore, HOA president, stormed toward him in her designer heels, her silk blouse soaked, but her fury unrelenting. Behind her, a caravan of black SUVs and sedans crammed with cocktail-dressed guests spilled onto the driveway. I have rights. This is public property. Mason's hand tightened on the lock. The metal chain rattled. This is our community lake. The gate closes at 9. Karen's eyes narrowed. A tremor of disbelief flashed across her face. Then rage. 9. I have an event planned. You can't. She didn't finish. One of her guests, a tall man with a camera, leaned out a car window, snapping pictures. Mason's stomach clenched. He hadn't anticipated witnesses. The tension hummed, thick and electrical. Guests shouted, some trying to squeeze through the gate. Mason held firm, but the undercurrent of panic gnawed at him. It wasn't just the gate. It was a sense that everyone around him, including Karen, expected the world to bend to their whims. Karen stepped closer. I'll call the police, she hissed. Mason's lips tightened. He'd seen her type before. Emails demanding compliance. Threats hidden in polite phrasing. This was the first time it spilled into the night air, uncontrolled and sharp. He felt a prickle of unease. It wasn't just about tonight. Her smirk carried a promise of escalation. Mason glanced around. Neighbors peeking from windows, the lake's dark surface rippling under the storm. Something about this scene, too many witnesses, too much emotion, felt cinematic in its intensity, almost unreal. He exhaled slowly, trying to stay calm. Fine, you can call them. But until they arrive, no one passes. Not tonight. Karen's scream cut across the water like glass shattering. Guests froze, their laughter dissolving into startled murmurs. Mason realized the night would not end quietly. The quiet suburban world he'd known, filled with jogging dogs and polite waves, had cracked. And somewhere in that crack, danger, maybe legal, maybe psychological, was hiding. Mason felt it in the tightening of his chest, the sudden racing of his pulse. It was more than a dispute over a gate. It was an intrusion into his life, a ripple that might turn into a storm. As Karen flailed, shouting about her rights, Mason felt a chill. He knew one thing. Once a Karen this unhinged went public, the fallout wouldn't stop at the lake. Mason's phone buzzed relentlessly the next morning. Each notification another echo of last night's chaos. Messages from neighbors, panicked texts from guests who had left the lake drenched and shouting. Even a few threats from unknown numbers. You'll regret this. He scrolled, trying to stay rational, but unease settled like a stone in his gut. He stepped outside, the lake quiet now, fog curling over its surface. Something about the mist made the tension from yesterday linger, tangible, almost predatory. Mason walked the perimeter, noting security cameras and gate sensors, confirming nothing had been tampered with, but something felt off. A soft chime from his laptop drew him in. Emails. Karen had sent a flurry overnight. At first glance, they were polite, formal complaints, accusations of harassment and illegal gate closure. But buried in the wording were veiled threats, references to lawyers, HOA meetings, even mysterious committee that might escalate things if Mason didn't comply. He leaned back, rubbing his temple. It wasn't just Karen. Something bigger was stirring. Mason began quietly digging. Background checks, property records, social media accounts of the guests. Patterns emerged. Some didn't live in the neighborhood, yet Karen had invited them to a private community event. Others had political ties to local council members. His intuition prickled. This was more than a personal vendetta. The HOA, Karen, the committee, someone was orchestrating influence, slowly tightening the grip around him. Late that afternoon, he returned to the lake with binoculars. Across the water, Karen paced near the gazebo, phone pressed her ear, muttering in clipped sentences. A flash of something metallic caught Mason's eye. She dropped something, or had she planted it? He couldn't tell yet. Neighbors started murmuring as he questioned them subtly, careful not to reveal his investigation. A few admitted being pressured to attend Karen's gatherings, some hinting that last night's confrontation wasn't unusual. Karen thrived on control, but others had their own stakes. Votes in the HOA, contracts and development, favors owed. Mason realized the social web was entangled, a trap set long before he ever touched the gate. The most alarming discovery came just as dusk painted the sky orange. Mason intercepted a printed letter, slid under his mailbox flap. Typed crisp and signed, it read, "Rules are for those who obey." Tonight was only a warning. Next time, it's not just a gate. A shiver ran down his spine. Whoever was behind this had anticipated his moves, predicted his defenses. This wasn't just a neighborly quarrel. It was an escalating game, and Mason had just become the target. He stared across the lake as shadows lengthened, the mist swallowing the gazebo where Karen had vanished behind trees. The quiet suburban calm of yesterday felt like a lie. Someone or some group was watching, calculating, waiting, and Mason had just decided he would uncover every hidden truth before the next confrontation. But already, he knew the deeper he dug, the closer he got to a threat far larger than Karen alone. Tonight, the lake would be quiet. Tomorrow, the hunt would begin. The community hall buzzed with polite chatter and clinking glasses, a gallery of suburban elegance masking a simmering storm. Mason stood near the entrance, surveying the crowd. Karen Whitmore had orchestrated this charity gala under the guise of goodwill, but Mason knew it was a stage. Tonight, she planned to humiliate him in front of every neighbor, lawyer, and guest she could summon. He spotted her immediately. Karen in a sequin dress, hair perfect, posture rigid with superiority. She laughed too loudly, gesturing to the crowd, her guests hanging on every word. Mason's hand brushed a small recorder in his jacket pocket, the device holding evidence of every threat, every manipulative email, every subtle intimidation she had used. Karen caught his gaze and smirked, a predator who knew she had him cornered in plain sight. But Mason didn't flinch. He had spent days piecing together the network behind her. Tonight, it wouldn't just be Karen. Every hidden alliance, every whispered pressure tactic would be exposed. She approached the podium with rehearsed charm. "Neighbors, friends, I hope you enjoyed the evening. Our community thrives when rules are respected, unlike some people," she said, eyes glinting as they swept toward Mason. The laughter from her allies rang hollow in his ears. Mason pressed a button on the recorder. The hall filled with a sudden, undeniable voice. Karen threatening him, calling for intimidation, referencing the anonymous committee plotting against him. Gasps spread through the room. Faces turned, confusion and disbelief written on everyone present. Karen froze. Her smirk faltered. She opened her mouth, tried to recover. But another recording started. This one a private conversation she had with her guests, bragging about bending the rules, coordinating intimidation tactics, even hinting at legal manipulation. The gallery fell silent. A sudden crash. One of Karen's allies, a man who had tried to block Mason earlier, lunged toward him. Security intervened instantly, but the shockwave of motion drew attention. Mason remained calm, his evidence now overwhelming. Karen's control unraveled visibly. Her voice rose, trembled, then broke. "You can't, this isn't fair." She looked around, desperation flashing. No one laughed. No one supported her. The mask of the social predator slipped, revealing only panic. In the chaos, Mason noticed something subtle. A dark figure at the back of the room, unnoticed, observing silently. Not Karen. Someone else. Someone patient, waiting for her to fail, to create the perfect opening. A hint that the network was larger, deeper. By the time security escorted Karen out, the hall buzzed with a mixture of relief and astonishment. Mason watched as neighbors whispered, piecing together what had been hidden behind her polished smile. But his eyes kept returning to that shadowy figure, a cold pulse of unease crawling along his spine. Tonight, he had won the battle, but the war, he realized, was far from over. Somewhere beyond the lighted hall, beyond the whispers and shocked faces, the real mastermind remained unseen, still moving pieces into place. The lake outside, dark and silent under the moon, seemed to mock him. Mason clenched his jaw, feeling the weight of a victory that was incomplete. The public showdown was over, but the story was far from finished. The morning after the gala, the lake glimmered under a cold, gray sky. Mason walked its edge, the wet grass crunching underfoot. The neighborhood seemed calmer now, neighbors nodding politely, children laughing along the docks, but the memory of last night's chaos still pulsed in his chest. Karen Whitmore had been ousted from her HOA position in an emergency vote, her allies scattering under scrutiny. The recordings Mason had captured became official evidence, her threats and manipulations documented beyond dispute. Mason watched the ripple of relief in the community, neighbors finally able to breathe without the tension of her tyranny hanging over them. Yet, despite the victory, unease lingered. Mason returned home, unlocking the gate with a deliberate click, the sound oddly satisfying. The lock no longer felt like a barricade. It was a symbol, a reminder of boundaries defended. But when he glanced back toward the misty lake, a flicker of movement caught his eye. He shook it off as imagination. The neighborhood buzzed with gossip, everyone quietly processing how quickly the social order had shifted. Mason's friends offered congratulations, but he smiled politely, saying little. In his gut, he knew the fight hadn't truly ended. The network behind Karen, the committee, the shadowy figure from the gala, was still out there, watching, waiting. He spent the afternoon organizing his evidence, cataloging the emails, recordings, and subtle social pressures that had once gone unnoticed. Each file a silent testament to the complexity of power hidden beneath suburban calm. Mason realized that winning the battle had required patience, intelligence, and restraint, but the war demanded vigilance. Later, he walked the gazebo at the edge of the lake, now empty and quiet, the water reflecting the muted sun. The wind whispered through the trees, as if carrying secrets from unseen corners of the community. Mason felt a chill he couldn't shake. The sense of being observed, studied, had not disappeared with Karen's fall. As dusk approached, he noticed something, a small envelope tucked beneath a bench near the lake. His name, handwritten, precise. He opened it with cautious fingers. Inside, a single card black-edged, stark against the gray evening. Written in neat script. Rules are temporary. Watch carefully. Mason's pulse quickened, the adrenaline of confrontation returning in a quiet, calculated way. Whoever had orchestrated Karen's aggression, or been quietly guiding her, was still out there, patient and unseen. Not yet ready to strike openly, but always moving. He looked across the water, the still surface hiding the depth beneath. Mason exhaled, feeling both relief and anticipation. The community was safe, for now. He had restored order, protected boundaries, and uncovered hidden truths. But the lake, the mist, the shadows along its edges whispered one undeniable fact. The bigger enemy remained, always watching, waiting for the next moment to test him. And Mason knew he would be ready. The wind rustled the trees one last time as he walked away from the lake, leaving the black-edged car behind, yet carrying its warning in his mind. The suburban calm had returned, fragile, fleeting, and haunted by the knowledge that darkness could return at any moment.